My name is Aisha, and this is the story I never thought I would share with anyone. Sometimes I sit alone by the window, watching the soft evening light fall on the empty street, and I wonder how life would have turned out if I had made different choices. Choices that felt right when I was young, but now sit quietly on my heart like heavy stones. People say time heals everything, but some wounds stay tender, especially the ones we give to the people who love us the most. I left my parents for a new life, and at that time I thought I was doing the right thing. I believed I was stepping into freedom, into independence, into a future that belonged entirely to me. But I did not understand what I was walking away from. I did not understand that the home I was leaving behind had a mother who waited for my evening stories, a father who saved the last mango slice for me every summer, and two gentle smiles that never asked me to be perfect, just present. The day I left, I walked out with confidence. I told myself, everyone leaves home someday. I'm not doing anything wrong. But sometimes it's not the action that hurts, it's the way we do it. The silence, the distance, the belief that they will always be there, no matter how far we go. I did not know regret could grow slowly. It does not arrive suddenly like a storm. It grows like a shadow, small at first, then stretching across every part of your life. I remember the last time I saw my parents together before everything changed. It was early morning. My father sat at the dining table reading the newspaper, glasses slipping down his nose, while my mother placed warm paranthas on the plate in front of him. They looked so ordinary, so peaceful, so safe. And I walked away from that. In my heart, I told myself they would understand. I told myself they wanted me to chase my dreams. I told myself that love stays strong no matter how far we go. But love is like a plant. If you don't water it, it doesn't die loudly. It just wilts quietly. Years later, when I finally realized what I had done, when the weight of my choices finally reached me, it was too late to go back to the same home, the same voices, the same warmth. Because sometimes life gives you one chance to hold on, and I let that chance slip through my fingers. This is the story of how I lost myself, trying to build a life far from the people who raised me, and how regret found me again and again, no matter where I ran. When I think back to my childhood, the memories come softly, like warm light passing through thin curtains. Nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary, just simple moments that felt ordinary back then, but feel priceless now. I grew up in a small house painted a gentle shade of cream. We were not rich, but my parents never let us feel poor in any way that mattered. My father worked long hours at a small shop he ran with stubborn pride. My mother stayed home, not because she couldn't work, but because she said her real job was keeping the family stitched together. Back then, I did not understand what she meant. But now, every thread of her effort feels like a reminder of how much she held on to. As a child, I was quiet. I would sit beside my mother in the kitchen, watching her knead the dough. She used to talk to the dough as if it could hear her. Soft, soft, no rush, she would say. Then she would look at me and add, life is the same, Aisha. If you rush it too much, it loses its shape. I wish I had listened. My father was different. He was a man of few words, but every word he spoke carried weight. When he laughed, it was rare but full, the kind that filled the whole room. Sometimes he would place his hand on my head and say, my little star, don't forget where home is. At that time, it felt like a sweet thing to say. Now it feels like a warning I didn't understand. Evenings were my favorite. Our house had a small porch. My father would sit there with his cup of tea, and I would sit beside him, swinging my legs and telling him all about my day. My mother would join us with a towel on her shoulder, wiping her hands as she listened with a soft smile. We didn't have much, but somehow it always felt enough. But like many children, I grew up imagining a bigger world outside. Our house felt too small. Our street felt too familiar. And the dreams inside me felt too big to fit in the life my parents lived. When I turned 16, I started telling my mother about wanting to study in the city. She would quietly listen, stirring the pot on the stove, nodding gently. If it's good for you, then go, she would say. But her eyes never matched her words. Her eyes were afraid. My father was different. When I told him, he sat in silence for a long moment. Then he said, "A girl must learn to stand on her own feet. But standing alone feels different when the ground is far from home." He didn't forbid me. He didn't argue. He simply prepared himself for the day I would leave. I mistook their softness for permission. Now I know it was love trying not to hold me back. When I finished school, I received an admission letter from a college in the city. I still remember the excitement in my chest. It felt like all the dreams I had carried were finally opening their wings. My mother held the letter with trembling hands. I asked her, "You're happy, right?" She smiled. Every mother is happy when her daughter moves forward, but her eyes didn't match her words. My father patted my shoulder and said, "Go, learn, live, but don't forget us, Aisha." I promised I wouldn't. I truly meant it. But promises are easy to make when we don't know how heavy distance can become. The day I left home, my mother woke up early. She cooked my favorite breakfast, even though she barely ate herself. My father carried my bags to the bus station. I remember seeing the way his shoulders looked heavier than usual. When the bus engine started, my mother placed her hand on the window and whispered, "Call me when you reach, okay?" I nodded. I didn't know it then, but that moment would replay in my mind for years. My mother's hand against the cold glass, her eyes filled with fear and love. And then the bus moved. That was the first distance I created.
Life in the city. The city was loud, colorful, and overwhelming. The first few nights, I couldn't sleep. The room I rented was small, with a window that faced a noisy street. Cars honked through the night, people shouted downstairs, and the world felt too big for me. But slowly, I adjusted. Slowly, I felt proud. Slowly, I felt independent. At first, I called my parents every day, then every few days, then once a week. My mother always waited for the phone to ring. I could hear it in the way she answered, breathless, eager. She would ask the same questions every time. Are you eating well? Do you sleep early? Do you miss home? I always replied lightly, I'm fine. Everything is good here. My father's calls were shorter. Study well. Don't waste time. We're here if you need anything. Their voices made me emotional, but I pushed the feeling away. I told myself I needed to focus on my new life. But here's the truth. New lives can sometimes demand more than we are ready to give. As months passed, I made new friends. I went out more. I explored the city. I began to feel like my old life was far behind me. Not forgotten, just distant. Back home, my parents continued their routines. They waited for my calls. They smiled when the neighbors asked about me. My mother's eyes lit up whenever I visited during summer. But the visits grew shorter each year. I'm so busy, I would say. I won't be able to come this month. I have assignments. I have plans. I'll come later. Later became my favorite excuse, and their quiet acceptance made it easier to stay away. Deep inside, a small part of me felt guilty, but I ignored it. I told myself I was chasing success. I told myself all parents want their children to grow. What I did not understand was this: parents want you to grow, but not grow away.
Background, family, childhood, relationships, early dreams. The shift I didn't notice. My mother used to send me voice notes. Just little things. I made your favorite curry today. It rained here. Remember how you used to run into the yard? Are you taking care of your cough? Some days, I listened. Some days, I didn't. My father rarely sent messages. But whenever he did, they were simple. Study well. Don't skip meals. We are proud of you. Their world stayed the same. Mine kept changing. Without realizing it, I started drifting. Not physically, emotionally. My parents remained in the same house, the same routines, the same small life. While I moved into a new world, a world where their presence felt quieter, smaller. And that quietness grew into distance. A distance I thought was harmless. A distance I thought time would fix. A distance that eventually became a wall.
The first real cracks between me and my parents didn't come loudly. There were no big arguments, no doors slammed, no harsh words, just small moments, quiet ones, the kind that slip past unnoticed until they have already changed everything. It started with something simple, a missed phone call. The first missed calls. One evening, I was out with friends at a small cafe. The place was bright and warm, filled with laughter and loud music. My phone buzzed on the table, lighting up with "Mama calling." I looked at it and let it ring. I told myself, I'll call her when I get home. But I didn't. When I checked later, there was a voice note. Her voice was soft, almost shy. "Just checking on you, beta. It's late. Are you okay?" I heard it quickly and put the phone down. I didn't reply until the next afternoon. She answered immediately. "I was waiting," she said. I laughed lightly. "You worry too much, Mama." She didn't laugh back. And that was the first moment I remember feeling a small pinch of guilt. Tiny, but real. Still, I brushed it aside. I had deadlines. I had a life. I had new people around me. I thought she would understand. But mothers understand with the heart, not with excuses.
The visit I kept delaying. Months passed. My parents asked me many times to visit. Even 2 days, my mother would say, "Just come home for 2 days." "I will," I always replied, "soon." Soon became next month became next semester, and eventually the visits stopped happening. My father rarely asked directly, but I could hear the hope in his quiet pauses. He would say, If you can't come, that's okay. Take care of yourself. But it wasn't okay. Parents don't ask because they don't want to burden you. They ask because they miss you. And they hide that missing inside simple questions. Still, I kept delaying. The small misunderstandings. Distance does something strange to love. It makes every small thing feel bigger. One day during a call, my mother mentioned that the neighbor's daughter visited often. She sits with me in the evening, she said. She reminds me of you. I should have felt warm. Instead, I felt irritated, though I didn't say it. Another day, my father said, Your mother made your favorite dish yesterday. She kept some aside, saying you might visit. I felt a strange heaviness in my chest, but I laughed it off. You know I can't just come randomly. I didn't realize it then, but every small comment was my parents' gentle way of saying, We miss you, come home. And every response of mine said the opposite. I'm too busy. I have a new life. The first visit after many months. When I finally visited after almost a year, something felt different. The house was the same, the smell of spices was the same, my mother's warm smile was the same, but her eyes had a quiet sadness I had never seen before. She hugged me tightly, a little too tightly. You have lost weight. Are you eating properly? My father stood behind her, smiling softly. She's fine, he said, patting my shoulder. But there was something else I saw, something subtle. They were older. Not a lot, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. My mother's hair had a few more grey strands. My father walked a little slower. It should have scared me. It should have made me come home more often. But I told myself, they are fine, all parents age, it's normal. The visit was warm, but it was short. Too short. I cut it down from 3 days to 1.5 because of important college work. I still remember my mother standing at the gate as I left. My father's hand rested on her shoulder. She lifted her hand to wave, but her eyes looked like she was trying not to cry. That image stayed with me for years, but even that wasn't enough to change me.
The new life that pulled me away. As my college years ended, I started working in the same city. My job was stressful, demanding, full of long hours and new responsibilities. Every day felt like a race. And slowly, without meaning to, I pushed my old life further and further behind me. My calls home became shorter. My mother would say, Do you have time for a longer talk? Not today, I would answer. I'm tired. My father would say, Don't forget to visit. I will, I would reply. And then I wouldn't. I don't know when exactly it happened, but at some point their voices began to feel like interruptions instead of comfort. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't even mine entirely. It was just life happening. But sometimes life becomes an excuse we hide behind. The first time my mother didn't call. About 3 years after I moved, something changed. I noticed my mother had not messaged me all week. Usually, she sent something, a good morning, a picture of the garden, a small update about my father. I waited. 2 days passed. Then three. Finally, I called her. She answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was calm, but different. Hello? Mama, are you okay? Why didn't you message? There was a small pause. Then she said quietly, I thought maybe you're too busy to talk every day. I felt a sudden sting in my chest. That's not true. You can message anytime. She only replied, Okay. But something was missing in her tone, a softness that used to be there. It wasn't anger. My mother never got angry with me. It was something else. It was distance. Distance I had created. My father's fall.
One winter evening, I received a call from the neighbor, not my parents. Your father slipped outside the shop. He's fine, but he hurt his knee. Your mother's with him at the clinic. I froze. I hadn't spoken to them in almost 2 weeks. Work had been hectic, long days, long nights. And I kept telling myself, I will call tomorrow. Now, tomorrow felt too late. I called immediately. My mother answered. Mama, what happened? She gave a small, tired sigh. He slipped on a wet patch. He's okay. Don't worry. Why didn't you call me? Another pause. You have work, beta. We didn't want to disturb you. That sentence hit me harder than anything before. Not because of the words, but the quiet acceptance inside them. Somewhere along the way, my parents had stopped expecting me to be present. They still loved me, still cared for me, but they had learned to handle life without me. And that was the beginning of real regret. The visit I almost skipped. My father needed rest for a few weeks. My mother sounded tired. The neighbor insisted I should visit, but I was in the middle of a big project at work. I told myself, he's fine. They said he's fine. I'll go later. But something in me, a tiny voice whispered, go now. I listened. When I reached home, my father was lying on the bed with his leg raised on a pillow. My mother sat beside him, massaging his foot gently. When they saw me, they both looked surprised, then relieved, then emotional. My father tried to sit up. Aisha, you came? My mother placed her hand on her chest as if steadying her heart. That moment broke something inside me. They weren't angry, they weren't disappointed. They were simply thankful I showed up, as if my presence was a gift, not a basic responsibility. I stayed 2 days. They begged me to stay longer, but I rushed back to the city, back to work, back to the life I thought was more important. Looking back now, those 2 days should have been 2 months. But regret always speaks clearly in the future, never in the moment.
The small signs I ignored. Over the next year, the calls became fewer. Not because they stopped calling, but because I stopped answering right away. Sometimes I was tired. Sometimes I was in a meeting. Sometimes I just didn't feel like talking. Every time I delayed calling back, it became easier to push it to the next day. Once, my mother texted, "We haven't heard your voice in a week. Are you okay?" I replied hours later with a simple, "Yes, busy." She replied with, "Okay." Just okay. No long message, no questions, no voice note. And that scared me a little, but not enough to change my habits. The day that changed everything, quietly. One evening, I received a call from my father. He rarely called me directly. I answered quickly, "Papa, is everything all right?" He hesitated. "Your mother hasn't been feeling well these days." Something inside me shifted. "What happened?" "Just weakness," he said softly. "She gets tired easily." "Did she see a doctor?" "Yes." "And?" Another pause. A slow one. "She's fine," he finally said. "Don't worry." But I knew that tone. I grew up with that tone. It was the tone he used when he didn't want to scare me. I told him I'd visit soon, but I didn't go immediately. Work was busy. Life was busy. And I believed his soft words, instead of the silence behind them. That was the beginning of the turning point, a point I couldn't see then, but would carry for the rest of my life.
I remember the day everything changed. Quietly, painfully, without drama. I remember the day everything shifted. Not because of loudness or chaos, but because of silence. Silence has a way of telling the truth long before people do. It started with a message, a simple one. My mother sent it early one morning. It is raining today. Take your umbrella. Just 7 words. Nothing unusual, nothing dramatic. But something about that message stayed with me all day. It felt softer than usual, quieter, almost like someone speaking from far away. I replied hours later, during lunch, "Okay, Mama." I didn't ask how she was. I didn't ask about her health. I didn't ask if she was resting enough. I thought there would be time for all that. I thought she would always be there. The call I didn't expect. That evening, at around 8 p.m., I received a call from my father. His calls always carried a certain steadiness, slow, patient, gentle. But that night, his voice sounded different. He said softly, "Aisha, are you free for a moment?" I said, "Yes, Papa, tell me." There was a pause, a long one, the kind that makes your heartbeat slow down. He finally said, "Your mother, she fainted today." Everything inside me went still. What? Why? What happened? Is she okay? He replied, "She's resting. She stood up too quickly and fell. The doctor came to check her." "Papa, why didn't you call me earlier?" He said quietly, not angry, just truthful. I felt something tighten around my heart. "Papa, what did the doctor say?" Another long pause. Then he spoke slowly, choosing every word with care. He said, "Her body is very weak. He wants more tests. He thinks, he thinks something is not right." My chest grew heavy. Something not right? What does that mean? "I don't know yet," he whispered. He didn't want to say more. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt loud. Then my father said something I will never forget. "Aisha, maybe it is time you come home." I froze. He had never asked like that before. He always said, "Come if you can." He never said, "Come now." I said the words I still regret. "Papa, I have a meeting this week. I'll come on the weekend." Another silence. A painful one. Then he said softly, "Okay, we will wait. We will wait." Those 3 words cut deeper years later, when I learned how long they had waited for me, in so many ways. The week that felt wrong. The next few days were uneasy. I kept checking my phone, expecting a message from my mother, a voice note, an update, anything. But there was nothing. Just silence. I told myself it was fine. The doctor was checking her. My father was with her. She was resting. Still, anxiety grew in small waves. At night, I would close my eyes, but my mind wouldn't stop replaying the last few times I visited home. How she walked slower, how she sat down carefully, how she smiled even when her hands trembled slightly. I had noticed these things, but I never asked. I never stayed long enough to understand. The guilt was like a shadow that kept growing. On the 4th night, I called my father again.
How is she? I asked immediately. He answered softly. She is tired, but she smiled when I told her you were coming this weekend. My throat tightened. He added, She is resting now. Those words scared me more than anything. They felt too final, too fragile. I decided then, suddenly, Papa, I'm coming tomorrow, first thing in the morning. There was a long breath and relief in his voice. Okay, beta, she will be happy. I didn't sleep that night.
The journey home. The next morning, I packed my bags quickly. The early air was cold. The streets were quiet. The sky felt heavy, like it knew something I didn't. The bus ride home felt longer than ever. Every passing field, every small town, every turn in the road made my heart beat harder. I kept imagining my mother, lying weak, holding my father's hand, waiting for me. I looked out the window and whispered to myself, "Just hold on, Mama. I'm coming." It was a strange feeling, fear mixed with regret. Regret for every missed call. Regret for every late reply. Regret for every later I had used as an excuse. By the time the bus reached my town, my hands were shaking. I grabbed my bag, rushed down, and took a rickshaw straight home. The silence at the door. When the rickshaw stopped outside my house, I felt a lump rise in my throat. The house looked the same, yet different. The flowers my mother used to water didn't look as fresh. The porch light was on even though it was morning. The door was half open, something my father never allowed. As I stepped inside, everything felt too quiet. No smell of food, no sound of utensils, no soft humming of my mother's voice. Just silence. My father stood in the hallway. When he saw me, he tried to smile, but his eyes were red. "Papa?" I whispered. He nodded slowly, walked toward me, and placed his hand on my shoulder. "She's in the bedroom," he said. "Go to her." My legs felt weak as I walked down the narrow hallway, every step heavier than the last. Seeing my mother. When I entered the bedroom, the first thing I saw was my mother lying on the bed, her eyes closed, her breathing slow. She looked calm, too calm. Her skin was pale but peaceful. Her hands rested gently on her stomach. I rushed to her side. "Mama?" I whispered. Her eyes opened slowly. When she saw me, something lit up inside them. A soft glow, like a candle flickering back to life. "Aisha," she whispered. Her voice was thin, like a thread ready to break. I knelt beside her and held her hand. It was warm, but weak. "Mama, I'm here," I said. "I'm here now." She smiled, a tired, fragile smile. "I know," she whispered. "I knew you would come." Those words broke me. She didn't ask why I was late. She didn't ask why I stayed away for so long. She didn't ask why I only came when things got bad. Mothers don't ask for explanations. They forgave without hearing an apology. She touched my cheek with her trembling fingers. "You look tired," she whispered. "Are you eating well?" Even then, even lying weak, She worried about me. I felt tears fill my eyes. Mama, are you in pain? I asked. She shook her head slightly. No pain, just tired, very tired. Her voice faded. I held her hand tightly. Mama, I'm sorry, I whispered. She blinked slowly, her eyes soft. No sorry. Just stay for a while. That sentence. Just stay for a while. It was the quiet truth of everything she had ever wanted from me. Time, presence, a few moments, a little attention. Not gifts, not money, not success. Just time. And I had spent years giving her everything except time.
The moment she fell asleep, she closed her eyes gently, still holding my hand. My father stood behind me, watching quietly. I whispered again, Mama? She didn't respond. Her breathing was slow but steady. The doctor had said she needed rest, but seeing her like that, so fragile, so peaceful, so still, scared me in a way I had never felt before. I sat beside her for hours, just watching her, listening to her soft breaths, finally understanding how precious those breaths were. At one point, my father placed a blanket over her shoulders. She didn't sleep well last night, he said quietly. I felt guilt wash over me again. She kept asking if you would come, he added. My heart broke. My voice cracked. Papa, why didn't you tell me? He looked at the floor. You had work, he said again. We didn't want to trouble you. That sentence, the one they repeated for years, hit me harder than ever. Because suddenly, it wasn't just an excuse. It was the truth. They saw themselves as a burden because I made them feel that way. Without meaning to, but still. I realized something then. Parents don't stop needing us. They just stop asking when they feel we're too far away to hear them. The truth the doctor revealed. Later that evening, the doctor came. A thin man with gentle eyes. He checked my mother, spoke softly to my father, and then stepped outside with both of us. His voice was calm but serious. He said, She is very weak. Her hemoglobin is low and we need more tests. But more than that, she is emotionally exhausted. I frowned. Emotionally? He nodded. She worries a lot. She doesn't sleep well. She thinks too much. I felt my stomach twist. My father looked down. She misses you, the doctor added simply. A lot. It felt like someone had pressed a heavy stone on my chest. The doctor continued, She needs rest. She needs care. She needs peace. And she needs her daughter beside her. I couldn't speak. My father stood silently beside me, his hands clasped together. For the first time in years, I saw the truth clearly. They weren't strong forever. They weren't young forever. They weren't waiting forever. And I had been living like I had endless time. We don't. The night I realized everything. That night I slept beside my mother. The room was dim. The air smelt of medicine. Her breathing was soft, almost invisible. I held her hand and whispered, Mama, I'm here now. I won't go back quickly. I'll stay. I felt her fingers curl slightly around mine. Not strongly, just enough to let me know she heard me. And in that moment, something inside me changed completely. All the dreams, all the ambition, all the busyness, all the excuses, they suddenly felt small. The city life that once seemed so big now felt meaningless. Because none of it mattered if she wasn't there. None of it mattered if my parents spent their days waiting for a call, waiting for a message, waiting for a visit that I kept delaying. That night, I saw the truth I had avoided for years. We chase the world, while the people who raised us wait quietly in the shadows, hoping we look back before it is too late. The fear of loss. At around 3 a.m., my mother's breathing grew uneven. Not dangerous, just uneven. But the fear that shot through me was enough to break me. I sat up quickly. Mama? Her eyes opened slightly. She looked at me for a moment, tired but warm. I whispered, tears falling, "Please don't leave me." She blinked slowly, squeezed my hand, and whispered, "Beta, मैं कहीं नहीं जा रही. तुम सो जाओ." But her voice, it sounded like someone saying goodbye. That night, I realized something else. Regret is not loud. It is quiet, like tears falling in the dark, like a whisper you hear too late, like a hand you hold only after it grows weak.
I walked into my childhood home with slow, hesitant steps. It felt like stepping into a memory that had been waiting patiently for me to return. The air smelled the same, warm, gentle, and comforting, like the blend of home-cooked meals, old wooden furniture, and sunlight resting on soft curtains. The world outside had changed. I had changed. But this place felt untouched. My father stood near the doorway, leaning slightly on the side of the table as if he needed support. His back was more curved than I remembered. His hair was thinner, and the lines on his forehead had deepened. But his eyes, those calm, steady eyes, remained the same. He looked at me for a long moment. Neither of us spoke. Words felt too small for the weight of everything between us. My mother stood behind him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. She looked fragile, softer, like a candle that had burned for too many nights without rest. But when our eyes met, something inside me broke. Not loudly, but quietly, like a paper tearing in the middle. I knew what I had done. I knew the years I had stolen from them. And I knew that forgiveness, even if they offered it, would not erase the regret that had lived in me for so long. "Come in, Aisha," my father said softly. That was it. No anger, no questions, no reminders of the years I had been gone. Just a door, held open, like it always had been. I stepped inside, and for the first time in many years, I cried openly. Not because they scolded me, not because they blamed me, but because they didn't. My father placed his hand on my head, a gesture he used to give me whenever I cried as a child. He used to tell me, "This hand is your shelter." And standing in front of him again, I realized how deeply I had missed that shelter. My mother walked closer and wrapped her arms around me. She held me so tightly that I felt her heart beating against mine, steady, patient, and forgiving. She whispered, "I missed you." And I, with trembling breath, whispered back, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "It's okay."
She didn't say, "You shouldn't have gone." She didn't say, "Why did you leave?" She just held me. Sometimes silence is the purest form of forgiveness.
We sat together at the dining table, the same table where my father once cut fruit into 4 equal pieces so no one complained. The same table where my mother stitched my school uniform as I did homework beside her. The table had scratches now. The wood was fading, and there were tiny cracks near the edges. But it held memories so strongly that even time had not dared to erase them. My mother brought tea. Not strong, not weak, the way I always liked it, she remembered. The familiarity made my chest tighten. We talked about small things at first. The weather, the neighbor's new dog, the vegetable market becoming expensive. They asked about my work, but not too many questions. They did not press into the parts of my life where they sensed pain. They let me speak in pieces, at my own pace. And I realized something important that day. Parents don't need explanations. They only need their child to come home. That evening, I walked through the house slowly, as if rediscovering an old diary. Every corner felt like a page written with warmth. My room was still there. My books, my old school bag, even the little ceramic bird I had made when I was 9. Everything was dusty, but untouched. My mother must have cleaned this room for years, hoping I'd come back. The guilt settled deeper. I sat on the edge of the bed, tracing the embroidered pillowcase she had sewn for me. The stitches were uneven in some places. She never liked sewing. But she did it anyway because I liked the flowers she drew on the cloth before stitching. I remembered the day I left. I didn't even look back at this room. I didn't run my fingers over these memories. I didn't say thank you. I closed my eyes and tears slipped down my cheeks. Years had passed, but the bed still felt like it belonged to me. The home still felt like it belonged to me. My parents still felt like they belonged to me. But I had not belonged to them for a long time. Not because they pushed me away, but because I walked away. After dinner, my mother and I sat together in the living room. The fan made a soft humming sound above us. The lights were dim. It felt like the house was listening. My mother looked at me, her voice gentle. "Life is not easy, Aisha, but you don't have to carry everything alone." I wanted to tell her everything. All the mistakes, all the loneliness, all the nights I lay awake wishing I could turn back time. But when I opened my mouth, only 4 words came out. "I missed you both." My mother placed her hand on mine. "We missed you too. Every day." She paused, her eyes softening. "You were always trying to be strong, even when you didn't have to be." Her words felt like a truth I had run from. I always believed strength meant distance, independence, silence, not needing anyone. But sitting beside her that night, I realized strength sometimes means falling apart in front of the people who love you. My father joined us a minute later. He walked slowly, carefully, as if each step deserved mindfulness. He settled into his chair and looked at me the way he used to when I was small and had a bad day at school, with patience, not pressure. He said softly, "Aisha, the world teaches us many things, but it forgets to teach us how to come back home." His words sank in deep in me. "Coming back takes courage," he added, "more courage than leaving." I lowered my head. I should have come sooner. He smiled gently. "But you came now." Sometimes simple sentences carry the heaviest meaning.
We talked late into the night. The moonlight slipped through the curtains. The world outside was quiet, but inside the house, my heart felt like it was learning to breathe again. My father told me about the small things I had missed. The lemon tree that finally grew fruit, the neighbor who kept borrowing sugar, the cracks in the courtyard tiles, the festivals they spent alone but pretended to enjoy. My mother told me how she kept my room clean
even when she knew I wouldn't come. She told me how she waited for my calls, how she stayed awake on nights she felt a strange sadness, but didn't want to trouble me. I realized they carried my absence like a quiet ache, not with blame, not with anger, just with love. The next morning, I woke up early. I walked into the kitchen and found my mother making tea. She looked surprised when she saw me awake before her. "Sit," she smiled. "I'll make your breakfast." I shook my head. "No, Mama. Today, let me make breakfast." She paused. For a moment, her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with a soft kind of joy. I made the simplest meal I could, parathas, fried eggs, and hot tea. But as I placed the plates on the table, I felt something shift inside me. Something small but important. Care. Responsibility. Love not in words but in actions. My father ate quietly, savoring every bite the way he used to. He looked up at me and smiled. "It tastes like old times." And I realized how much I had longed to hear that. Over the next day, we cleaned the house together. We laughed, we shared stories, we watched the rain fall outside while sitting by the window. It felt like the pieces of my life were gently rearranging themselves. Not back to the way they were, but into something new, something healed. Regret was still there. It doesn't disappear in a moment, but it softened. It loosened its grip. It became something I could hold without breaking. Because now I was home. And home has a way of teaching the heart how to breathe again. That night, before going to bed, I stood in the doorway of my parents' room. They were talking quietly, their voices blending with the soft glow of the lamp. I whispered, "Good night," and they turned to look at me. My mother smiled. My father nodded gently. Something so simple, but in that moment, it felt like a blessing. As I walked back to my room, I thought about everything I had lost and everything I had found again. I knew life would not be perfect. I knew wounds don't vanish overnight. I knew time doesn't rewind itself just because we wish it would. But I also knew this: love waits. Not forever. Not endlessly, but long enough for us to realize its worth. And sometimes long enough for us to come home again.
The next morning, sunlight filled my old room. It fell softly on the walls, on the cracked mirror, on the faded curtains my mother stitched years ago. The light felt warm, gentle, almost like a welcome I didn't deserve, yet was still being offered. I sat up slowly, listening to the quiet sounds of my parents moving around the house. It was such a simple thing: the clink of a cup, the sweep of a broom, the quiet hum of my father's radio. But it felt like the most comforting music I had heard in years. I realized then how much I had missed this. Not the things, not the objects, but the feeling of belonging. The sense that I was part of someone's ordinary day. Part of a rhythm that loved me without needing anything from me. I walked to the kitchen and found my parents preparing breakfast together. My mother slicing fruit, my father pouring tea into 3 cups. They looked up when I entered, and their faces softened with the kind of smile that only comes from years of love. "Come sit," my father said, pulling out a chair. It was the same chair I sat in all through my childhood. I sat down quietly, and the 3 of us ate together, not talking about the past, not talking about mistakes or apologies, just living in the moment, breathing the same calm air, sharing the same table. It struck me then how healing doesn't always arrive with grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives with a cup of tea, a small smile,
A chair pulled out for you at the table you once abandoned. After breakfast, I helped my mother wash the dishes. She protested softly. Go rest, you just came yesterday. But she let me stay beside her. Our hands moved in calm rhythm, water running, dishes clinking. It felt like sewing back an old thread that had frayed long ago. Later, my father and I sat in the courtyard under the lemon tree. The leaves rustled gently, carrying the soft scent of citrus. He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed, peaceful. You grew up, he said quietly. Then he added with a smile, but you're still our child. I felt a warmth in my chest, a warmth that told me I was forgiven, even if the word was never spoken. We talked about small things, the weather, the garden, the neighbors. And in those simple topics, I found something I had been searching for, a sense of steady ground beneath my feet. When we finished talking, my father looked at me with eyes that had aged but remained kind. You don't have to stay forever. You have your own life, your own world. But visit us. Let us be part of your days. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. I will, Baba. I promise. He placed his hand on mine, the same hand that once held mine when I was little, guiding me across busy roads and crowded markets. He said quietly, Love doesn't disappear. It just waits for you to remember it. Those words sank deep into my heart. When evening came, the house glowed with soft yellow light. My mother lit the small lamp near the entrance, just like she always did. It felt like a symbol, a tiny flame that had stayed alive even when I wasn't here to see it. I stood near the doorway for a long time, looking outside. The sky was turning orange, the way it used to when I would come home from school and drop my bag on the floor. The world looked the same, but I had changed. And maybe that was okay. I walked back inside and sat with my parents watching a quiet old TV show we used to enjoy together. The stories were simple, the humor gentle, the kind of comfort that doesn't demand laughter, only presence. As the night grew deeper, my mother reached over and touched my hand. You don't have to carry your past forever, she whispered. Let today be a new beginning. I nodded, my throat tight. A new beginning, yes. Not perfect, not sudden, but real. Soft, steady, possible. When I finally lay down to sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A sense of peace settling over me like a warm blanket. Not because everything was fixed, not because all the wounds had healed, but because I was no longer running. I had stopped. I had looked back. I had come home. And in that quiet, gentle home, I found a truth I had lost long ago. Love may wait silently. Regret may stay heavy. But forgiveness is a bridge we can always choose to cross, no matter how far we walked in the wrong direction. I closed my eyes, breathed slowly, and let the softness of the moment settle into my heart. Tomorrow would come with its own challenges. Life would continue, with all its imperfections. But tonight I was home, and that was enough.